And so today, your children?
Today, the one that got really sick, and I missed the year and a half of school. My daughter, she was diagnosed with autism, colitis, and has an IQ of 69. She was like a social butterfly before that in school. She was the first one skipping out the door in the morning and had a ton of friends. They all wrote notes.
So it's wrecked their lives, basically.
The other one, even though she recovered after that first blackout, little by little, year by year that went by, she had more blackouts, more seizures, hit her head quite a few times, and she's cognitively impaired now. Sort of reminds me like an Alzheimer's in a young person, and has incontinence. So I have those two at home, and thank God my other older son, he recovered. He has migraines and some vision problems, but you know, like, he's socially not affected, thank God. And the younger one who had the seizures and the eczema, he's not socially affected, thank God. But he suffers every day with the eczema, every single day. I'm Chris Runquist.
And your story?
I'm the mom of 4 kids, and they're all adults now. And my story started a long time ago. My first 3 kids were all born pretty much without incident, as far as I knew. I thought the ear infections and sore throats and asthma and allergies were normal. That's what I was told. And then my 4th son was born with an infection and had to be on a heart monitor for, I guess, like his first 6 months of life. And it was really scary because the heart monitor would go off all the time. I would have to run in, shake him, pick him up, make sure everything was okay. And all through those years, all through my first 3 and him, my kids always had all their vaccines. Nobody ever said a word to me about them being dangerous. And I guess I was pro-vaccine. They always had them. And then when my son was almost 2, he had his first grand mal seizure. We had to call 911. So we were rushed to the hospital, and thank God he was okay after that. And then a few weeks later, I'm trying to think of the time frame. It wasn't too much longer after that. He had another one, and the second one was really bad. He was totally unconscious afterwards. After the thrashing and his eyes rolling back, he just went totally limp and wasn't breathing at all. His lips were blue. I did the part of the CPR that I know with the rescue breathing, and he came back okay, thank God. The ambulance came and checked him out. And then it happened again in Philadelphia. We were driving in the car coming home from the Franklin Institute, and I turned around and I saw his eyes going back. He was buckled in his car seat in his snowsuit. So we stopped the car in the middle of Philadelphia, ripped him out of the back seat, and ripped his snowsuit off. He was burning up. And the ambulance picked us up like right on the street, brought us to the hospital. He was in the hospital, children's hospital there, for about a week or so, and they put him on phenobarbital. That was upsetting to me because...
And what exactly is that?
It's a anti-seizure medicine.
Right.
And it kind of made him look like he was drunk almost. And I said to the doctors, does he have to take this every day? Isn't there something I could just give him, you know, if I notice he's going to have a seizure from a fever? They said, no, you have to give this to him every single day. So when he was on that for a few years, and then I took him off of it myself because I didn't like seeing him on that. And when he was about 4, they wanted him to have another shot. I forget which one it was. And I remembered the fevers causing him to have a seizure. And because of that, I said, no, we're not going to do it. And at that point, they didn't bully me or anything. They were fine. But I still didn't make the direct vaccine danger connection. I was thinking fever and seizure, and I thought it was just personal to him. Well, it was in 1998, my older 3 kids needed the hepatitis shot for school. It was mandatory that year. And so I took them in. They all had the shot. And as soon as we got home, my one daughter started shaking, and I told her to go up and lay down. She was crying, and then she started throwing up. So she's laying in her bed shaking and crying and vomiting. My other daughter is running around the house, flipping her arms back and forth, and her lips were blue. She looked like she was going to pass out, and she had this fearful look on her face. And my son was grabbing his head, saying, something's wrong, something is wrong. He had his eyes closed. He said, something's wrong. So I called the doctor. I said, my kids really got sick from this vaccine. I said, I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. And she started yelling at me on the phone, saying, it's not the vaccine. Your kids are just sick. It's not the vaccine. So I must have spent the rest of that year running from doctor to doctor. The 2 kids recovered at that point, but my one daughter never recovered. She missed 1.5 years of school that year, and all her friends were asking, what's the matter with Jazz? What's the matter with her? How come she's not coming back to school? In the beginning, they let me have tutorers. The doctor wrote notes so I could get tutorers, but after a while, she wouldn't write me any more notes, and I ended up just homeschooling her because she was so sick all the time. She was vomiting so much that eventually she had 14 root canals from the acid, and that was the year that started. And at one point she had a hole in her esophagus and always had vomiting issues. So we've been to a million gastro doctors. It wasn't until I took her to a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Magaziner in Cherry Hill, that I finally found something that helped her. He put her on a detox regimen, IV vitamin treatments, and then told me to give her certain vitamins and minerals, and that was a big turnaround point for her and keeping her away from a lot of junk food. My other daughter, the one that had initially gotten frantic after the vaccine, had her very first blackout and collapsed a few weeks after the vaccine. And she went unconscious, and I remember thinking for a second, oh no, I hope this doesn't have something to do with the vaccine too. But she recovered after that, and I just pushed that to the back of my head, because it seems like every time I mentioned the vaccine making them sick, I was told that it wasn't the vaccine. I was crazy for thinking that. How could I think that about vaccines? So then it was about 2 years after that 1998 incident with the 3 older ones. My youngest one, the one who had all the seizures and stuff, he also had severe eczema. We were on a plane going to Disney for our first trip, and he got a severely high fever suddenly on the plane, started screaming his head off, and we spent that whole trip, him and I, in the hotel room. The rest of the kids went to the park with my husband, but he couldn't even walk. And I called the doctor from there. I said, he is really sick. He said, well, just give him the Tylenol, bring him in as soon as you get back. He was getting these red ovals all over his body, and they weren't raised at that point. It seemed like it was under his skin, almost like a leopard, and it was all over his body. And he was white. When we got home, I brought him in, and he looked at him, the doctor, and said, oh, that's just eczema. So, flash forward again. In the year, it was about 2000. It was 2 years after my older three had that bad reaction to that hepatitis shot. And then they wanted him to have it too for 7th grade. I had homeschooled him from kindergarten up to that point because he was so sick all the time. And so he was pretty healthy. I learned from what I was doing with my other daughter for her stomach was helping him too. We did gluten-free and all that. And so he was feeling really good. I really wanted him to try out school, see how he liked it. He wanted to, he was excited. And then they were trying to force me to make him have the hepatitis shot. And I said, my son's not having any more vaccines. So the nurse started sending me letters at home saying it was mandatory. The principal was sending me letters saying it was mandatory. So I went in personally to the nurse, and I had an argument with her. I said, my son had severe seizures when he was younger. I said, there's no way I'm going to let him have the shot. And she said, what is a seizure? A seizure is nothing to worry about. So at that point, I realized that I was dealing with a totally different mindset, and they weren't concerned about my son's health. I went in and had an argument with the principal, and I walked out of the school crying, and my good friend at the time pulled up, and she said, Chris, what is the matter? What's the matter? She never saw me upset before, and I said, they're in there trying to force me to make my son have this vaccine. And she knew how sick he was when he was younger. And I said, I don't want him to have it. My other one's got really sick from it. He's already been sick, and he likes school. I want him to be able to go, and I don't want him to have it. So she said, you're talking about the same vaccine that my kids got sick from. She said, my doctor wrote me an exemption note right then and there because my one daughter, I didn't want to say their names, but her one daughter blacked out right in the office. So her doctor gave her an exemption. I said, I tried to get an exemption from our doctor because they said they wanted it for school, and she won't give it to us. She said the CDC won't let her. And so I said, what's your doctor's name? I'm going to take him to your doctor. She said, you can't. He left the practice. So now when I look back at that, I asked her, I said, did he leave the practice, or did they take his license away for giving me that exemption? She doesn't know, but that's what I'm thinking, that maybe that's what happened. So I went home and I called the mayor. I told her the whole story about the schools and what happened and his health. So she was the one that said to me, you have to claim religious exemption. If they're not going to give you the medical exemption, you just have to do religious exemption. And she said, I have the information, I can give it to you. And I got the information from her. I went up to the school and I gave the principal my note. He wouldn't take it at first. He threw it back at me across the desk and said, I'm not going to take that note. And he said, you have to explain why you're religiously exempt, and you can't have any medical reasons in it, and you can't have any morals in it. And he just fit right in with the nurse who said that seizures were nothing to worry about. And so I said my prayers going home. I said, okay, God, I don't know what to do. You're going to have to tell me what to do because I don't know what to do. Tell me what to write. I can't let my kids have any more of this. So I went home and I pulled the Bible out and I wrote a 3 or 4 page letter, typed it up. I took every psalm and proverb out of the Bible that had anything to do with being judged or judging people, and I gave that to them, and that was the one that got us religious exemption from any further vaccines.